Hello, everybody. Paul here. I hope wherever you are right now watching this, you're doing well, whether it's early in the morning, late in the evening, or in the middle of the afternoon. There has been a lot of discussion lately, of course, most of it coming through YouTube and within the manosphere and the MGTOW community, all sort of doing this right now about the subject of MGTOW, particularly as it relates to marriage. And I wanted to offer some thoughts about that. Now, you're going to have to please bear with me. I don't do scripts. I'm an extemporaneous talker. And so sometimes I tend to wander. So if you will just bear with me with that, I promise with each point of this, I will get to the actual point and try to get across what I'm talking about. There's a particular challenge here, though. And the challenge is that in talking about MGTOW, or men going their own way for the uninitiated, there is a difficulty up front in even beginning to define the subject, because as the name implies, men going their own way, there is a literal implication in the title of that it is an individual choice. And I'm actually going to stick with that through most of this talk. But I did want to talk about some of the things that are going on in the community about it, some of the claims that are being made. I want to offer an opinion. And the first one that I will offer, that I want to make the most clear, is that that's all anybody's got on this subject, in my opinion, is opinion. There is no MGTOW guru out there. I mean, I'm as big a fan of Barbarossa as anybody. I like Stardust work. I like other work that people do. And I think they have a lot of good things to say, some of which I disagree with, but most of which, most of the time, resonates very well with me. And I think the message is pretty much spot on. But when it comes to the reality of being somebody going your own way, the very idea that there's anybody in the world other than yourself that can define what that means, to me, is ludicrous on its face. And it now seems that we do have people out there trying to capitalize on this like it's some sort of PUA community by saying, oh, here's what a MGTOW is. No, here, I know what a MGTOW is. This is not a new phenomena. I mean, certainly men arguing amongst each other about ownership of terms and what is the right way to do things is certainly not new. Men going their own way is not new. I know that Peter Wright has gone back and done exhaustive research on this, and he's found references that I believe are well over 100 years old to men going their own way. It's been, with the advent of the internet, it's had a rebirth and a resurgence in the form, for lack of a better word, of a movement of men that are changing their lives, that are changing their perspectives. But there is a lot of different personalities involved, and there's a lot of disagreement on what those things mean. One of the things you might want to Google is veto MGTOW, or as I understand it, the belief that you can practice the MGTOW lifestyle simply with veto power, by simply refusing to be controlled and by rejecting participation in things that you don't think benefit you, or use you or exploit you in a utilitarian way. And there's certainly some real power in that. I'm actually a big believer in practicing that in personal life. But now we have a lot of people talking about MGTOW, about whether or not that we've got factions out there that just say, no, can't have anything to do with women at all. Men going their own way, don't even have sex. There are guys out there saying that men going their own way don't get in the same room with women. They don't talk to them. They don't have anything to do with them. That girls have cooties, that sort of thing. And a lot of these are some really angry, wounded guys out of relationships, no shortage of that. And there's no shortage of my sympathies for what happens to men in a lot of relationships. But that only constitutes one relatively significant sized percentage of the MGTOW community. There are other people who identify as MGTOW who date women and who try to do it on an egalitarian basis, equal pay, or that refrain from using the word date, that just hang out with women, and if sex happens, fine, or they may use game or pickup techniques. But it goes so much further than just the relationship that men have with women. And that's really what I want to get to. And there's two levels of it. The first is the sort of checking out of society's expectations. That my experience with talking to a lot of men that identify as MGTOW is that it's not so much about women. I mean, certainly that's an intimately involved part of it, but it's really about the freedom to choose not to do what's dictated to you by your sex when you're born. That you don't have to be the guy that gets up and protects everybody when something goes bump in the night. That you don't have to be the one to pull out your wallet simply because the woman next to you at the bar has had a few drinks and is batting her eyelashes, and that you reject notions of and messages that we get from people like William Bennett and Kay Heimowitz that men need to man up. And who was it else? Tucker Carlson, that little twerp, sending a message. I loved watching him on Fox News, and Dr. Helen Smith shut him down in about 30 seconds by reminding him that the message he was sending is that men should just be willing to take a crappy deal no matter what. The point is here is that a lot of men are looking as though, and like they are in Japan with the Soshokudanshi, the grass eaters, which is a really different kind of population of men. I mean, I don't think they should be confused with Western MGTOWs, but there are some similarities in that these men have decided to opt out of what I would call the corporate chase or the rat race. They have decided that the corporate ladder and climbing it is unstable, that it can be kicked out from underneath you at any time, that it may not support your weight, and that what you're really doing is working your way to an early grave, usually in order to be able to support a woman who's not working. And they're checking out of that. And from the reports that I read, there is a lot of concern in the Japanese government about this attitude. I've read an insurance study that indicated that over 60% of the men in Japan that were between, 18 and 34 identified as grass eaters. And they're just not interested in having much more than enough to eat and some fun to have. They're not that much interested in romantic relationships, which causes, I won't say causes, the reaction to that in a lot of Japanese women is to shame and humiliate them. And the Japanese press runs a lot of articles poking fun at them, telling them to man up, sort of the same way they do to us here in the West for men that have decided to start checking out. If I were, I started this out by saying that the moment that we try to define what MGTOW is, for anybody but ourselves, we're on the wrong path. And I firmly believe that. I think if you're one of these guys out here saying MGTOW is this and MGTOW is that, here's my MGTOW for you. This is my MGTOW for you. And study it, look at it, get used to it, sit on it and twist. I don't care. Nobody defines who I am but me. Nobody labels me but me. I just simply reject it. I use my veto power for that. And this is where it crosses into the area of marriage. And this is why I entitled this talk, Marriage, Megalomania, and MGTOW. Because we now have a contingent in the, call it the manosphere, the men's community online, the men's movement, whatever, that are barking orders at people, telling them what they must do and must not do. Let me ask first, does that sound familiar? Anybody heard that before about what you have to do, what you have to be to belong, to call yourself this or that? It sounds like, and it is, a very thinly disguised version of man up. And I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and just tell you what being MGTOW means to me and what choices I think it affords people in life, well, particularly only men, because we are talking about men going their own way. And so I want to preface it by saying that I'm going to talk in terms as though that I'm defining this, but please know that with every word that I say, that I am fully aware that I cannot define it for anybody but myself. If you find some benefit in it, great. And if you think it's bullshit, great too. I simply don't care in the end whether anybody else adopts it. But I did want to share my experience and my observations of what I've seen in changes in men who adopt this lifestyle depending on what their attitude is. And we're going to get to marriage in a couple of minutes, but let's first talk again about the fundamental basic relationship with women that men have. Now, I ask myself, and there is oh man, there is a big contingent of the MGTOW community online that seems to be just like insane about any time you mention women. It is, though the obsession with women is still there, the control of women is still there. And so I started thinking about the differences between people. And one of the things that I came up with, and I was explaining this to my partner earlier, that if I have a man come up to me and he says, you know what, Paul, I've studied life. I've studied what's going on in our family courts. I've seen what happened to my father. I've seen what happens to other men. And I've decided that as much as I think women are beautiful, and as much as I would really like the idea maybe someday of having children, that's not the route I'm going to go, because it places me at risk and vulnerability that's just totally unfair. And the risk is very high. It's not, this isn't just hyperbole or making up some drama. These are men that know that they've got a real high probability of investing everything in their wallet and in their hearts and in their minds and in their bodies into creating a family, and that it can and frequently is just snatched away, and they are left in poverty and alone and with a great big butcher knife sticking in their back. And these men come and they say, this is what I've decided. It's nothing personal against women. I'm looking at the system. I'm looking at the expectations on me in this, and I've decided I'm not going to do it. And let's say another guy comes to me and says that he's MGTOW, and I ask him why. And he says, because all women are cunts and they're whores and they're thieves and they rip you off and they're bitches and you can't trust them and they'll cheat on you. That's why. Fucking bitches. I ain't having anything to do with them. I'm going my own way. Now, the question here is, in my mind, that if we look at individual number one, who we'll call John 1, and individual number 2, who we'll call John 2, is that between the two of those men, who do you think is free? I would think about that for a moment. Who is free between those two men? Because to me, MGTOW is about freedom more than anything else. It is not about my marital status. It's not about what job I do. It's not about anything except what's going on in here and what's going on in here. And when I see a guy raging about all the terrible cunts in the world and you can't trust any of them and they're all fucked, I see somebody in a prison. I'm sorry, that's the way I see it. I see somebody in a prison of their own animus, a prison of their own hostility, their own resentments, and believe me, I fully understand that a lot of those guys got there quite honestly. I mean, you go through around a family court and you end up bleeding a few quarts of blood, and you go from living a decent life to being jobless and living in a studio apartment or a car, or worse than that. It can do strange things to your mind. So I am not sitting here in judgment of men whose reason for being MGTOW or MGTOW, however you want to pronounce it, is that they hate women. And this is what we're talking about. We're talking about guys that hate women. And I'm a firm believer in some of the things that Zed has written, that misogynists are made. They're not born. So this isn't again, it's not to cast judgment. But I want to go back and talk about John number one for a minute, the guy that has simply examined the situation in life and decided, you know what, this is not a good deal. And I don't have to hate anybody, and I don't have to be resentful, and I don't, and okay, I got screwed in a previous divorce, but I don't have to carry that baggage with me the rest of my life. I simply have found a way out of that risk, and I'm going to go ahead and take it and go that way. And by the way, while I'm at it, I think I'm going to find something to do entrepreneurial. I'm working for a corporation right now. I'm going to shuck that job. I'm going to try to get off the radar a little bit, maybe even start like doing things like growing my own food, and just simply getting out of the grid of everyday rat race life. That guy to me is the guy that's looking for freedom. The other guy is the guy that'll never find it. And this is sort of a philosophical approach to it, but I think it's critical. And it's why the reason that I'm bringing this up is because of the main question that people talk about. Oh my God, how could you say you're a MGTOW if you're married? I mean, the courts can get you. Well, here's the deal. You know, can a skydiver be a MGTOW? I mean, they do take a risk every time they jump out of an airplane. There is a chance people do die in those things. Can a stock car racer be a MGTOW? Does MGTOW mean that you've shielded yourself from all risk in life? Or is it not completely and 100% possible that a man can meet a woman and he's maybe somebody that's read 1,000 MRA articles and been on the forums for MGTOWs and knows this stuff? Is it possible that a man can make a decision to say, I met this woman, and the thing is, I do want to have a family. I would like to have a wife. I would like to have children. I don't know what kind of deal we're going to work out financially or any of that other stuff, but I know that that's something I would like in my life. And I know that it's a risk because I've been reading, I've been a voice for men for 2 or 3 years. I've been doing all kinds of things to make myself aware of what the potential risks are in that situation. That I know that she does have legally a loaded gun in her hand, which she can use on me at any time. Can a man sit there conscious of the whole world, of every possible risk that is out there, and then decide, that's what I'm going to do? Isn't that, in fact, his way? Who is out there? And there's comments section here, and I welcome them. You know, by all means, please, if you can prove me wrong about this, I would like to see it. But I need to hear the logic that says that a man is not allowed to identify himself as going his own way, if he is conscious of the world around him and decides that's what he wants. Who am I? Who is anybody? Who elected anybody the Pope of the world of MGTOW, that they're going to be able to look at that guy and see a wedding band on him and say, well, he can't possibly be MGTOW, when they don't know anything about the way the guy lives, what's inside his head, what he knows, which may be more than they know. These are key critical questions, because what I see going on out in the community right now is a bunch of people trying to form a club that there's a litmus test for. And if you don't pass this litmus test, you can't come into the MGTOW club. My point about that is that, and again, my opinion, because I'm not trying to tell you or anybody else what you're supposed to be, but I wouldn't fucking join a club like that for anything. I wouldn't belong to a club that had any kind of litmus test about my personal life and whether or not I was married or whether or not that I worked in a particular place or whether or not that I believed a certain thing. That's why I got into being a MGTOW myself, is because I get to choose all those things for myself. Nobody else gets to choose them for me. Once again, and I'll say it again, I may say it again before this is over. You don't define me. You don't tell me what I am. I'm a MGTOW. That means I make decisions on how I want to live. And I am content and happy and peaceful that way, as opposed to being, now I certainly put on a pretty good dog and pony show of rage and anger and dealing with feminists, but that's one of the things I've chosen to do in my life. That's my choice. But the point I'm getting at here is that the moment we start telling people what to do, I'm reminded of the old expression, I've heard it a few times, is that trust the man that's looking for God, beware the man that says he's found them. And even as a total and complete skeptic, I love that saying, because what that saying is saying to me is that you trust people that are looking for answers. You're people that are struggling to improve, that are open and are shifting and moving with the times and with ideas and with the maturity and the maturing of their own mind. But once people find an answer, once you're a true believer, then you've got a Bible thumper. And we got a whole lot of Bible thumpers out there right now in the MGTOW community, self-proclaimed prophets telling people who they are and what they're supposed to be in order to belong. Remember the finger I held up earlier? My rule is, and if it makes sense to you, do it, is to hold up the same finger to them. Because again, what we're talking about is choice. Now we move on to the sort of final part of this, and well, I say final in a very, very figurative sense, because there really is no final part to this. This is an ongoing discussion that's going to be going a long, 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 long time, not going to end anytime soon. But I do want to talk about marriage itself and MGTOW, and whether or not that it's even reasonable to rule that out. I don't think it is. I'm going to use an example. I'm not going to say his name. I don't think he would mind if I said his name. He's a great guy. He's our forum administrator for AVFM forums. He's been married for 30 years, has children, loves his family with a passion. A really great guy. And to me, this is a MGTOW. And 100%. And of course, I can hear the sort of chorus of screams that how can you possibly say that? Again, relationship rules are choices. People can make trade-offs. I mean, we got somebody on staff right now, again, another person I'm not going to mention, being attacked for being a trad con. Well, what is a trad con? We've had trad con relationships where this really rigidly defined, the man goes to work and he takes bullets and he comes home and the woman's standing over stirring the pot and then serves up his soup, and then she vacuums in her pearls and dressed like June Cleaver, that sort of thing. That is like this long in human history, that arrangement. So when people talk about traditionalism, I want to laugh at that. We're talking about a relationship agreement that is, one, no longer really that much in place now with the amount of women that work, and that two, was not that much of an arrangement for a long time beforehand. We've had a very narrow window of time to develop this so-called tradition. What marriages and families used to be based on, families were like concerns. Everybody worked in them, and women worked brutally hard before technology came along. So it wasn't like, and most men worked close to the home or at home, farming or artisans, things like that. The women helped out, the children helped out. They were put, they violate, by today's standards, every labor law that you could imagine, but it was everybody pitching in. Then we developed some technology, had a couple of great big wars, and the next thing you know, we had one generation of people that could set things up so that only one person worked, and that another person didn't work and had a much easier life than women had before them for all time. Um, so that's not a tradition, folks. That is a blip on the radar. It's just silly to even think of this as though it's run back for hundreds and hundreds of years. It hasn't. It's a brand new phenomena, a baby on the scene of Western human development. And what we are more likely to have now is arrangements between people, sort of like the arrangement that I have. I'm in a relationship for 13 years, and like, I'm not the designated taker out of garbage. I'm not the designated much of anything. There may be a couple of things where I'm designated. One, I think this is a very good point to bring up. If something goes bump in the night, I'm going to be the one to get up and go check out and see what it is. Why? Well, I'm 6'8" and 285 pounds, and I'm about 100 times more capable than my partner of handling physical combat. That's why it is a practical decision. Get that? It's a practical choice. That doesn't mean that I'm a slave to male utility and male disposability. It means that between the two of us in my partnership, that I'm the one with the skills and the ability to most likely succeed at handling that situation. So I'm the one that does it. And there is a ton of stuff that she does, that a lot of the stuff that she does better than I do. I'm a terrible organizer. I mean, say I'm a terrible organizer is probably just one of the biggest understatements of my lifetime. I'm a horrendous organizer, and she does all these things to keep organized. And we have a shared agreement of duties and responsibilities and bills. And yes, she produces income and pays for things. Yet I'm the one that's going to get up in the middle of the night and go check out if something goes bump. And if there is imminent conflict or violence directed at her, I'm going to protect her, again, for the same reasons. These are pragmatic choices. They are not, I'm conscious of them. I know about biological history. I know about my wiring. I know about, how that men are programmed. And at the same time, I will tell you this in a heartbeat, that if I'm on a sinking ship and somebody puts out a call that put all the women and children on the lifeboats first, all I can say is they better not get in my way, because I am going to take care of myself. I don't by rote go out and sacrifice for strangers because they have a vagina. And that's conscious living. It's not practical for me to live that way. So here's the deal for me, to put this in a nutshell, and it's something that I think is really important. MGTOW is a state of mind, period. There's no other way to describe it. It is a state of mind. Nobody can stand outside you and tell you what your state of mind is. Nobody can look at your living arrangements or what you're doing for a living, or whether or not you're married or cohabitating or dating or abstinent or anything, and know whether or not you're a free-thinking individual that's conscious and making choices. When people worry about what's going on, for instance, we have a lot of people worry all the time about, oh my God, you've got so-and-so writing an article on ABFM, and so-and-so's a tradcon. Look, living a life in that fashion is a choice that every human being is allowed to make. This isn't something we're going to kick them. We don't have a club where we say, oh man, you believe this, get out. We don't do it that way. And I believe that's true MGTOW philosophy. People have choices. Freedom is about choices. It's not about trading in one master in the form of a tradition or biological expectation that's been going on for 3 million years, and then trading it back out for another master that's going to tell you what you can do and what you can't do in order to be free. MGTOW to me is about being free inside. It's about being free in my mind. It's about not being fooled by what's going on in the world around me. About not, I'm able to peel back the veneer from most situations in life and look underneath it and see what's really going on. And then I can make decisions and choices. And if I decide to take risk, and people want to tell me that means I'm not going my own way, what kind of insanity is that? That to me is just absolutely, if I can say so, the wrong approach. What I encourage men to do is to make conscious choices. That means learn, read, observe what's going on. Think about your life. Think about your odds in a family court. Think about the characteristics of the person that you're considering becoming connected to romantically, or even in a much bigger commitment like a marriage. I certainly encourage people to be conscious all the time about all this stuff, because the world is fraught with danger. But to tell them that there's no such thing as a woman that they can partner with, man, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And we've actually got people out there saying that right now. Well, guess what? And what's really interesting, and this is part of the bone, if I have a bone to pick with the overall MGTOW community, it's this. A lot of MGTOWs are saying all the time that it's hopeless, that human beings are biologically predetermined, and there's all this deterministic stuff, all this deterministic crap, and that women are hypergamous. It's in their nature. It's every last fucking one of them. You better believe it. You better watch out, because that's the way that they're built and conditioned. That's true. How do we have a movement of men that can simply pop a red pill and fix all that? How do we have a MGTOW movement? How do we have men opting out of lives with women if it's all so deterministic, if there's no choice in the matter for anybody? And what is the message here is that men can make the choice to beat determinism and to choose their own path and go their own way, but women are helpless and they have to be hypergamous. I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that at all. The real deal with that is that men generally get what they tolerate. I used to tell clients all the time, if you go fishing with stink bait, you catch bottom feeders. And I worked with many, many groups of men and asked them and at the beginning of most of these groups, if they were frustrated, if they ever had the feeling, one, what on earth do I got to do to please this woman, to the point that they're pulling their hair out? And of course, with the men that were straight, almost every one of them raised their hands. And I asked them also, how many of you are frustrated with the financial pressures that she needs this and she needs that, and there doesn't seem to be a lot left for you? And a whole lot of guys raised their hands at that. And then I asked them, when you first met her, how did you attract her? Well, I bought her this, I took her that, and of course, this is how this stuff gets set up, is that men make these choices to buy people, to buy their attention, to buy their affection. They feel like that's how they have to compete. And then, of course, 3 years down the road, they're like, my God, this bitch is spending me into the poorhouse. How did this happen? Well, it happened because you. That's how it happened. And MGTOW is about understanding that and making choices from the beginning not to live that way. I think I've covered about as much as I want to. I'm going to come back and visit this subject a couple of more times, because I think it's worth a lot of discussion. If you will put your comments about what you heard tonight, I will include them in my next talk about this, and I will take challenges. I will try to answer the toughest questions you can put out there I will do my best to give an answer. And I feel very comfortable doing that because, like I said from the beginning, all of this is simply my opinion. I don't have any fact. I don't have a MGTOW license. I'm not like the Grand Poobah MGTOW that wears the fez and all that and mandates to others what they do. I'm just a guy with an opinion. But I'm watching all this going on in our community, much of which is dedicated to men's rights. And I'm a proud member of that community. I love being a men's rights activist, and I love being a MGTOW. Those are the passions in my life. And so I want to talk about this some more. But the first thing I wanted to do was just sort of brush away some of these rather insane ideas. One, you know, men don't need to go MGTOW because all women are cunts. I mean, if you really believe that way, I honestly feel sorry for you because you're trapped in resentment and anger that's festering. It's a cancer on you. It's not hurting anybody but you. But I want to learn more from the guys that make informed decisions, that are looking for peace and freedom, but they're not expecting somebody else to give them permission. And they're especially not looking for somebody else to give them approval. Well, that's all I got for this time. I've enjoyed doing this. I actually want to do a lot more. I've been intending for some time to really set up and do talks like this on different subjects on video from home, and I've delayed it and had many other things to do all the time, and had to have a little come to Jesus with myself and say, you know, Paul, you really got to start doing this, because this is the kind of thing that can spark a lot of good conversations. It can produce material that we can bring to the website, and hopefully draw some other people into this discussion about MGTOW and a whole lot of other things that do affect the lives of boys and men. And with that, I'll say good night, or good evening, or good morning, and thanks a lot for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.